40-2019 parking fine increases, Bethlehem Parking Authority. I will accept a motion and a second to discharge the Public Safety Committee from consideration of Bill number 40-2019.
So moved.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion by Mr. Callahan, second by Mr. Cologne. Discussion on the motion to discharge the committee. Mr. Callahan?
Thank you, Mr. President. I just think that, we've been discussing this, it's been on the table, and discussed it for over almost a year now. I think at some point we got to, let the parking authority know where we stand on this. There's been a lot of discussion, which I think has been some false information about, having to lower the rates to help retail on Main Street. And I think that if you look at the, I live on Main Street. I live right there on the corner of Main and Broad. You can hardly ever find a parking space on Main Street in the downtown district, ever. I go down there for lunch almost every day, and sometimes I got to park, a couple blocks away. So I don't think the issue is the fee structure of the meters, and it's definitely not the fee structure of the garages. If you ask the parking authority, the ideal thing, and if you ask any of the people who own businesses down there on Main Street, we don't want people parking on the meter all day long. That's like the worst thing that can happen to the downtown. So the goal is to make it cheaper for people to park in the garages who are going to be down there for 8-9 hours a day. So if you, and that is the way it is set up right now with the garages. It is not set up that way right now with the fee structure of the fines. It's actually, we are actually rewarding people breaking the law. It's, if you pay the meter all day, it's $1.50, 8 hours, you're looking at $12. If you just negate the meter, don't pay it, ignore it, break the law, it's only $10. So you're saving $2 by breaking the law. And if you look at the numbers that the parking authority has written fines, it's almost doubled in the last couple of years. So we don't control the fines. The mayor does that. I mean, the meters, I'm sorry. So the mayor made that decision. That's his decision. Our decision is based on the fines. So I just think at this point that, retail, I heard at the last meeting that, we need to do something to help retail on the downtown. The downtown's not struggling. We have one of the most vibrant and booming downtowns in the state of Pennsylvania. There's no parking down there as is. The retail throughout the United States is hurting. So are some retail facilities on Main Street hurting or struggling? Maybe. But retail is hurting all over the United States of America. Out at the malls, they have free parking out there. Down at the promenade, they have free parking. Retail's hurting down there. So it's not the cause of retail hurting in the United States. It's not free parking versus metered parking. So I just think that we need to, at some point, move on with this, and one way or the other. I don't know if it's the will of council to pass it or not. If it isn't, that's fine, but I think we need to let the parking authority know so they can move ahead with Plan B. And I talked to, as a liaison for the parking authority, I talked to Mr. Hoffmeyer, I talked to Mr. Livingston, and they would just like to know one way or the other instead of just stalling it in a committee. I will tell you this, Plan B has to be, right now it's out of control down there because people know it's cheaper to pay the meters, and it's hurting downtown businesses with the meter fee the way it is, or with the fine fee the way it is, because as I said earlier, it's cheaper to just pay the fine and take a chance of getting a parking ticket. 20%, only 20% of the fines that the parking authority writes is for meter violations. And I don't know if the parking authority wants me to tell this, but it's true. And just so everybody thinks that the parking authority is not the bad guy here. There's already built in 3-minute grace period in all of the meters. So it's not like the parking authority just driving around waiting for, boom, that second that someone's meter violation goes. It goes for 3 extra minutes. And only 20% of all the fines that the parking authority is writing is on meter violations. A large majority of them are on violations of people not moving their cars on street cleaning days. So, I just think at this time it's time to move it forward, and let the rest of council vote on it instead of keeping it in a committee. And I would hope that council would support that. So, thank you.
Mr. Plum?
Thank you, President Waldron. I'll be brief. We had a few committee meetings. We had a recent Public Safety Committee meeting about the fine increases. We had one about a year ago. We've talked at length about statistics and things like that. But kind of where I'm at with this is I would support putting it on the agenda for a vote. I would support the motion made by Mr. Callahan tonight. That being said, I hope it wouldn't. I know during the Public Safety Committee meeting, some other members of council had engaged the parking authority in discussions and things that maybe they wanted the parking authority to explore and see, and I would hope that between those members of council who are interested in having conversations like that with the parking authority and the good faith of the parking authority and Mr. Livingston and their board, that this would not end those conversations. But in terms of what we're talking about with the fine increases, I would support us taking action on that with a vote up or down. Thank you.
Is there any other comments from members of council on the motion to discharge the Public Safety Committee in consideration of bill number 40? Dr. Bimmer?
Just for the benefit of the people in the room, at the committee meeting, there were 3 members who voted, and we voted not to support the parking fine increase at this moment, 2-1. And one of the reasons was because I wanted to make sure that when the parking authority was taking into consideration structural changes to the parking system, which is complex, and there's a lot of ways to interpret how to make people's parking behavior work appropriately, that the parking authority was considering what's best for the people of Bethlehem, the parkers of Bethlehem, the small businesses of Bethlehem, and not just the bottom line of the parking authority. So along those lines, I requested that the parking authority consider instituting free parking in a pilot area. I had suggested downtown on Main Street, Broad Street, and 3rd Street in South Bethlehem. But I think any proposal that the parking authority might put forward that would entail free parking and helping our downtowns be more lively. Like, look at what Allentown does. They have free parking in their garages after 5 p.m. Something that shows that we can use the power of parking to help our downtowns and not just continually add fees and parking meter fines and rate increases on it. So I had asked that that be considered, and Mr. Hoffmeyer, who's chair of the authority, said that they would consider it. And I think what we were hoping to accomplish is having that dialogue now, rather than hoping that the parking authority will do this at some future junction. And that's the background behind the vote, and why I still would like to go before the parking authority. And I hope that my colleagues on council who may support the fee increase tonight would come with me, because I think that this is a really good dialogue to have. Like, what is city council's role in helping discuss the parking authority and its ways of interacting with the city? How do we have a healthy relationship and a good dialogue? So whatever the outcome is tonight, I certainly hope that any of the members of council who may think that there's ways to explore helping our downtown would come with me and enter in this dialogue with the authority. Thank you.
Mr. Reynolds?
Yeah, just a couple thoughts. One is I think that the one thing that we all agree on is that the parking system is complicated. And I also think that everybody hates the parking authority so much, it's hard to have a rational conversation about some of these things sometimes with people when you hear fines. And I credit both Mr. Callahan and Dr. Van Wert for their comments here. I think going forward, there's not a reason why we can't do both of these things. I think if you look at a potential pilot program, which I think is an idea that's absolutely worth exploring, it has to be done by ordinance, and it would have to include fine increases that council is going to control. Just like over the past couple of months, as people have talked about how we got to this point by which the mayor controls some parts of parking, parking authority controls some parts of parking, council does. Because the system is designed like that, I do agree with Dr. Van Wert that, City Council should have some ways to influence that conversation. I also agree with a lot of what Mr. Callahan had said, is that we are not going to make people, we could just do away with fines completely. That's something council could do, and then people wouldn't put money in the meter because there'd be no reason to. But going forward, I think that both of these ideas have merit, and I think that the process by which to create a pilot program and the amount of details that are included in there, as far as how do you do the signage, how long, where is it, all of that is worthwhile. And I think the idea, we need to write less tickets. I said that last meeting. Mr. Livingston was shaking his head. It is the single worst thing that I think goes on with anything having to do with parking, is that people hate getting a parking ticket. They hate the emotional feeling of it. They hate everything about it. So we probably need to do a couple of different things. We probably need to do both of these ideas to find ways to reduce the amount of tickets that are being written. Because whether or not it's anecdotal or emotional or not, it does affect some people's ability to want to park in our downtown. So I think that it's a good idea I think it's always a good idea to talk about the parking system, because it is complicated, and you never can use one sentence that sums everything up, because as Mr. Callahan said, different businesses want different things, restaurants want different things, retail want different things, but at the same time, other cities are clearly doing different things that involve some type of free parking here, that at least anecdotally from afar seem as if, they're appreciated by the people. So I think going forward, I do think we should have a vote on this in 3 weeks, but I also think that, as a city council, we should take a look at some of the different ideas, such as, the idea of creating a pilot program, which will not be a simple process, but I do think that we should weigh in on that conversation. We should be involved in that conversation going forward as a way to look at all the different options here. So I think both of these ideas are worthwhile and things that I'm, sign me up for. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Brown?
Thank you, President Waldron. I just want to say and encourage anybody that would like to know more about what happened at our committee meeting to check out our website and revise the video, because we did have, like Dr. Van Wert had a very long and intense conversation, all very merit and important. And I said it at the meeting, I'll repeat it again, I do believe that we need to increase the fines, but I also believe that we cannot keep on increasing the fees because it's hurting our pockets, the people's pocket. And the businesses will keep on, every 5 years we're going to keep on increasing it. I mentioned I have 2 daughters that live in Philadelphia, and I go there very often, and trust me, I pay attention to where I park because I don't want to get a ticket in Philadelphia, just like in New York City. They're extremely expensive, and that will definitely deter people if the parking fines are higher. But I still don't, I wish we can reconsider the structure that we have in terms of, this division of one entity operates and controls one thing and the mayor and council the other. I think that is causing a stretch that it shouldn't be. I really don't understand why, but I will not support this tonight because I was in the, I'm a part of the committee, and we had a discussion, and the majority agreed that we should hear more from the parking authority, and even they were willing to do the study, as Dr. Van Wert stated it earlier at that meeting. So thank you, President.
I'll be brief and put my 2 cents in. I pretty much concur with all the comments tonight, but I think that it's time, even though I hate to increase any expense on our citizens, that we do need to increase the fines to deter people from just staying at the meter all day. But I think we can do both, look at increasing the fines and also work with the parking authority to institute a pilot program whereby we could have free parking at certain times of the day and evening and certain times of the year.
Thank you, Ms. Crunchy-Smith. My perspective, Ms. Crunchy-Smith just said something that kind of flashed in my mind. Just, she doesn't want to increase expenses to people, and I agree with her, but I don't think a parking violation fine is an expense. if you follow the rules that are pretty clear of the time limits in the parking meter. So this is strictly a deterrent to the fine increases, deterrent so that people will pay the meter, which is the intent that the parking authority wants. They don't want to write tickets and depend on that revenue. They want people to follow the rules so that they don't have to write something to the effect of 80,000 tickets a year. I don't know that there's anyone on council who disagrees that the $10 parking fee is too low. And I would hope at the same time that we can continue this conversation to some of the things that Dr. Van Wert had touched on with the pilot program, potentially in free parking, because that will, as Mr. Reynolds said, will require an ordinance and a future conversation. So I look at these as two parallel paths that can kind of run concurrently. So I think the conversation should move to full council for consideration of the fee increase. Simultaneously, I think the parking authority should work with the administration, work with council on some other creative ideas that we might be able to do to help our downtown, to support them, as well as make people feel fair in their use of our downtown and our parking system. Mr. Callahan?
Thank you, Mr. President. Yeah, I would also just add that, you know, I agree with Mr. Reynolds. I mean, the whole idea of getting a ticket anywhere is very displeasing to anybody. But I would encourage all council members in the next 3 weeks, if you get a chance, during the days and on the Saturday, there is free parking on Sundays, you know, throughout the BPA Parking Authority. But I think that if you take some time and go down to Main Street and Broad Street and the downtown historic district, you're going to find out that there is no parking available as is on the meters at curbside. There's none. Once in a blue moon, you're going to find an empty spot, someone pulling out. But so that tells me that paying the meter is not an issue for anybody. And I just think that it's time that we help, you know, correct and help the parking authority get control of the meters again. I just think it's out of control. I've talked to Mr. Livingston several times about it. I can tell you this. I think that they will do the study if we ask them to. I do not think that they are in favor of giving out free parking on Main Street. I think before we would do that, I would hope everybody on council would go downtown and talk to all the merchants and see, what would you think if we had free parking all day long on Main Street? I think they would be very upset about it, because that's going to basically tell, I mean, there are residents on the second and third floors of most of those properties on Main Street, and you would basically see no turnover in those parking spaces, and I think it would severely hurt the downtown merchants and restaurants even more. So again, I don't think paying the meter is the problem, because they're already filled as is. And last comment is that, you know, before we order all these studies, I think everybody needs to understand these studies cost an enormous amount of money. Just to say, hey, we want to study on free parking in the downtown, which I don't believe is going to happen, but I may be wrong, but we're looking at $20,000, $30,000, just blowing $20,000, $30,000 for a free parking study. If that's the will of council, you know, God bless. But I don't think that's the way to go. Thank you.
Mr. Walden, could I just factually correct something, which are in the minutes of the committee meeting, if you would like to refer to them. But the idea is that you have free parking. It's modeled on other cities that have successfully implemented this. It's time limited to 2 to 3 hours, and the deterrent is that the parking fee, parking ticket is increased to $30 or $40 or $50. So there is mandated turnover by the high penalty of the parking ticket itself. It's a model, it's well studied, it's effective, and it increases turnover because everybody knows they can come downtown and stay for a certain amount of time. The people who are risk averse to that ticket park in the garage. So it's a well endorsed model. I just wanted to correct that factually. Thank you.
Amen. Mr. Callahan?
Mr. Van Wert, didn't you make a comment in that meeting that you were concerned about the finances?
Mr.
of
Callahan,
the
can you
parking?
direct your comments to the chair, please?
I thought we established that that Mr. Spurk said in small committees we are allowed to address each other. That's according to Robert's Rules of Order.
I just would hope that you could be respectful.
I am.
Thank you.
I'm just asking a simple question. Dr. Van Wert, you had made a statement that you were concerned about the finances of the parking authority. I don't see how we're giving everybody free parking on certain days and lowering the rates, which was also a suggestion, is going to help the finances of the parking authority. That's all. I just wanted to make a comment. Thank you.
Is there any other discussion on the motion at hand? The clerk will please call the roll.
Ms. Cranston Smith.
Aye.
Ms. DeGrom.
Nay.
Mr. Reynolds.
Aye.
Dr. Van Wert.
Nay.
Mr. Callahan.
Aye.
Mr. Cologne.
Aye.
Mr. Waldron.
Aye, passes 5-2. I will now